So here we are again. I think there are some questions, aren't there?
Yes, there are some questions. The first question I will ask you is, you talked about a magnet and about the situation that you live in, your parents, etc., and the culture that it is becoming, that it's attracted by your character. But could I have been born in Asia or Africa with my character?
Well, it depends what your character is. If you are a very specific character, then the possibilities are limited. But if you are a universal man or woman, then you may live everywhere, because everywhere you can be the one who you are. So it depends very much on your character. I mean, if you just have a relationship with just a few people, your parents or your friends, and they should like football, and if they don't like football, you don't want anything to do with them. And if they are not a certain class of the society, then you are not interested in them. So that's very limited. Sorry. But if you have a very universal character and you are the friend of everybody and you can cope with a lot of people, and you can, you have a very character that is interested in all kinds of things, not just mathematics and not just languages and not now everything, then you are a universal person. And of course, when you are universal, you can live in a lot of parts of the world, because you can do your thing, as they call it, in Africa and Asia, in Europe. So it depends very much on the person itself, to which circumstances it is attracted.
Thank you. And I've got another question. As you say, there is a strong relation between karma and svabhava. Can you tell a bit more about it in relation to the development of a child?
Yes. Well, you cannot separate the 7 jewels of wisdom, as we have tried to explain also in our symposium of this year and last year. So karma and svabhava have everything to do with each other. So you become yourself always on the basis of cause and effect. This karma and svabhava are linked. But svabhava means also that you are becoming, and that's the more difficult part of svabhava, your inner nature. You're becoming more and more your inner nature. You are the child, as I tried to explain in the lecture, you are the child of your own higher nature. So if you say self-becoming, there are 2 selves. You become your personal self on the basis of cause and effect, but you also are becoming your higher self. And your higher self you will become because of your focus in life. If you focus on spiritual things and universal things, you evolve, you unpack, so to speak, the properties and the characteristics of the higher self quickly, and you're becoming your higher self. And in the deepest core of your higher self is that individuality, which is always different from other individualities. So you are becoming ever more your inner core, and that is the deeper meaning of svabhava.
Thank you. And there's another question. We've got 2 questions. Still, does a magnet always works in one direction, towards the actual character of man?
No, it's a metaphor. It's a comparison, but you can compare a human being also with a radio. But a radio that not only transmits thoughts, but also attracts thoughts. And the magnet has 2 poles, you know, a pole that repels and a pole that attracts. So communication is a very dynamic process. You send and you receive, you send or you receive. And our consciousness is therefore sending thoughts, repelling thoughts, receiving thoughts, repelling human beings, make contact with human beings in a very, very dynamic process. So it's not just one way. No, it's very dynamic. It's like, how to say, like one drop of water in the ocean. It is in connection with all the other drops, and it's all an interaction and all interconnectedness. It's very dynamic and very complex, but it's always the human being itself who is the boss, so to speak. Yeah, he is the one who colors his magnet or his radio station. He tunes the radio station. So according to what he is, he receives and he attracts and he repels, etc.
Thank you, Barend. And then the last question. You said that when you go to sleep in the morning, you are a different person. When you are awake and go to bed, you are a bit a different person. But is that always in growing and learning more, or can you also fall back?
Well, if you understand something, if you really know something, you cannot pretend. You can pretend that you don't know it, but then you're lying to yourself. So I have a kind of background, my conscience. We talked about it in the first lecture, and in I think next year there are 4 lectures about conscience. So, but I can go against my conscience. So in a way I fall back. But I do know that I'm doing things that I actually shouldn't do. And in that way, unfortunately, we cannot use the wisdom and the knowledge we have. And in that way, it's in fact true that we can fall back. But we cannot get lost of the things we are, because we are that knowledge. We became that knowledge, and you cannot deny it. Yeah?
Those were the questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, then we go on with the second part, and I hope you don't mind that I begin the second part of the lecture with an explanation of another Sanskrit word. We've been dwelling on svabhava, self-becoming, the most essential characteristic of a human being, which in a never-ending process, he's becoming more and more and more, so one becomes more and more his higher self. That's the deeper meaning of svabhava. And now I want to introduce another Sanskrit word. And we need the language of the gods, Sanskrit, because the terms therein can indicate the nuances much better than our European languages can, especially if you use the explanation of those words as Gottfried de Peruca does in his works. And another word is Dharma. Dharma is, I think, a little bit better known than svabhava. Dharma is derived from the Sanskrit root dri, which means to support or to brace. And if you look for the meaning of Dharma, you will see that it has a number of meanings, which may seem to be different one from another, but if you think deeper, you will see that they are closely related. In Buddhism, Dharma is often translated as law, a law in capital letters, the law of nature, or the general pattern of habit in nature, the pattern of divine beings. But you also see Dharma translated as religion. And the motto of the Theosophical Society is Satyat Nasti Pado Dharma. There is no religion, there is no Dharma higher than truth. Also, Dharma is understood as the true philosophy, the true science, the true religion, and the synthesis between philosophy, science, and religion. And finally, the most interestingly for us tonight, Dharma is also duty. And just to be clear, duty is also written here in capital letters. Now I said that these 3, at first sight, different meanings do have a common background. And it is the fact that they all have something to do with supporting, sustaining, bracing. They are the pillars of which something rests. Now when we speak of law, the divine law, then we speak about the foundation or the cosmic reality. The law is the law of cooperation, mutual support, compassion, inserting yourself into the whole, so that the whole can exist and grow. When we talk about religion and philosophy and science, we are talking about three fundamental faculties of human thought. The questions of the how and the why and the to where. Three pillars on which human thought rests. And finally, when we speak about duty, we mean the mission or the duty that every human being has to carry out in this life. Is that duty imposed by a God? I answered that question already, but it is extremely important to realize that this is not the case. There are even Theosophists who have been studying Theosophy for years, and yet they think that there's something outside of them that is forcing them to do something. Again, this is not the case, because you always take yourself with you at birth. You become yourself in accordance with the teachings of Svabhava. And further, you can never become yourself in isolation. You become yourself only in relation to others. And you see, if you have the trait of being nice, of patient or impatient, then that characteristic can only come into being or can only be expressed in relation to others, to whom you are kind or to whom you are patient or impatient. So the men and the women you are confronted with contributed to you being able to be who you are, and that you can become who you become. They are actually the reflection of what you are yourself. So you become yourself partly thanks to others, which means that you also have obligations towards those others. We have already compared a human being to a magnet. He attracts humans, repels them according to the color of his character, according to who he is, so in accordance with his svabhava. You should never take this as a doom, as a fate that befalls you. On the contrary, it is you who determine with whom you associate and with whom you don't associate, what you attract in terms of ideas and whatnot. Moreover, we have told you, svabhava, self-becoming, is not a static thing. So the magnet that you are can change color and therefore attract new thoughts and new people and perhaps repel others. And finally, there is something very, very important, and that is that the circumstances in which you find yourself and the people you deal with never determine how you are in life and therefore who you are. Because it's your own reaction to those circumstances, your own attitude towards the people who surround you, which determines who you are, determines whether you are satisfied or happy or unhappy, and that reaction is always traceable to your own free will. So you have your happiness and your unhappiness in your own hands. Make sure that you are independent in life and therefore think for yourself, so that you have the strength to respond appropriately to the circumstances of life. The thoughts that you have thought in the past and that now come back to you on the basis of the cyclic law, you will have to test and assess whether they meet the requirements that you now set for them. So, although you are always becoming yourself, you have become yourself in the community in which you live, a community which you have, as it were, woven around you, like a spider weaves its web. Because as a human being, you are a thought magnet and therefore attracts and repels others. What is your task in life now? Your unique task. Because no one is in the position you are in. You have made yourself in the boundlessness of time and space exactly to what you are now. And you build up the conditions in which you find yourself in this life. The task, therefore, has everything to do with the people with whom you live. Now, as a growing, reincarnated human being, the first thing you have to do is ask yourself who you are. Sometimes people talk about the excess of youth, about partying, looking for adventures, the restlessness, the vitality of young people. Some speak of this with disgust, but the way I see it, it's actually a search for who you really are. And it is strongly colored by the environment, the peers, the friends on Facebook and Instagram. Often you are not allowed to be yourself there, how contradictory that may sound. Now, on the social media, you have to comply with a certain profile, you have to be happy, you have to be beautiful, you have to be satisfied. Yes, it seems that others must be jealous of you. But often, those pretty pictures you post on social media disguise the fact that you are insecure about yourself. Have you ever wondered, am I really that picture on Facebook or Instagram? Am I that pimple on my left cheek that makes me feel so insecure? And you want to find your unique task in life? If you want to do that, you will have to try to answer some questions for yourself to find out who you are. I have arranged some of those questions. You could also come to a different arrangement. It's just an attempt to show some of the questions which a young and growing person, but that also applies to adults and elderly, could ask themselves. Who am I? That's the first and most important question. What is my relation to others? Why am I attracted to some people and not to others? Where should I place all my feelings, my turmoil, my depression, my friendship, revulsion, love? What is my place in the cosmos? What is my relationship to the big picture? My relationship to other life, to animals, plants, minerals? Why do I find myself in these circumstances? What is the meaning of life here and now? How can I change circumstances? What do I want to do and why? Can I choose, and how do I do that? Can I change my mentality, and why do I want to do so? What are my motives for changing? How do I know what is true? Is what my parents or my teachers or my friends say true? How can I know that someone is telling the truth? Well, let's briefly consider these questions. We are not going to answer them. Everyone has to do that for themselves. But from Theosophy, we can certainly offer thoughts, ideas, that can help you to come up with an answer. Now, the first question, who am I? You could rephrase this question like this to get at least a beginning of an answer. Am I a body, or do I have a body? Obviously, from Theosophy, the answer can easily be given. You must, especially as a young person, ask yourself this question. Behind this body of mine, is there a power, is there an energy, a soul? Give it the name you like. Can the world as we know it exist if there is not a force working through or behind it? Is what we see a reflection, a projection of something else, something working through it. It is one of the first questions we also ask in our course, Thinking Differently. A course that, if you are interested in, you can see on our website, and you can participate in that course. And the answer of that first question is actually very important and determines how you answer all these other questions. If you think you are a body, which of course is everyone's right, then you answer all the questions very differently than if you think you have a body. In the latter case, death and birth are nothing but a gateway, an entrance and an exit of the consciousness that you are. Having a body, rather than being a body, of course also has its consequences in relation to others. If you think that you are that force behind the body, and you can of course see that idea as a hypothesis, as a thought experiment, so see what it brings. If you think that you are that consciousness that works behind the body, does that mean that you are essentially different from others? Aren't those others then also a consciousness, and are those consciousnesses essentially different from each other? Or is there oneness? Then why am I still sometimes overwhelmed by emotions, perhaps by sadness? Why do I sometimes feel lonely? Could it not be that in the consciousness which I am, let's assume for a moment that this is true, could it be that my consciousness, that there is in my consciousness, or there are in my consciousness different aspects, different layers, as it were, which sometimes make me feel pretty awful and insecure, and in other times I feel a strong bond with my friends, with my parents, with my teachers, yes, perhaps with all people. In short, is there in me a self, an I, that is very different in life, an insecure self that feels separate from others, and a self that is much calmer and sees the relationships with others? Who am I? Am I both selves? If I am that one self, then I can cooperate much better with others than when I am that other self. That self which often feels excluded and insecure and sometimes does not want to cooperate at all. And you see, essential questions which you can ask yourself in order to arrive to your unique task in life. What is my place in the cosmos? In school you may learn very different things than what your heart whispers to you. Is the cosmos empty? Is there no life? And if there is life, how is that life? How is life on other planets? What does it look like? Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Are the answers that you might get to these questions satisfactory? Think independently. Could it not be that the cosmos that we perceive with our senses is the body, is the vehicle of a consciousness that is working behind it? Does the cosmos, just like a human being, have a body, but is not a body? If it does have a body, doesn't that change the whole perspective on life? If you look at the sun, or look at the stars at night, something that unfortunately is almost impossible in big cities, do you see then, just like when you look at your friends or parents, only the garment, only the body, the veil, behind which lies the being, the power, the energy? Is that energy, that power, that life, not the same as the life that is behind your body? What a different perspective it gives. Your relationship with the cosmos suddenly becomes very different. And wouldn't you like to share such a thought with your friends, Wouldn't you like to talk about this ideal with your friends, no matter how strange they may seem at first? You can talk about them for a long time, for hours and hours, so long that you forget to make your homework. But this time, this doesn't matter. Well, if the cosmos is a living entity, then why do I live this life? Why am I in this school? Do I have to do this job? Do I live in a country where there's hardly any nature left, where there are no homes for young people? Why do I live in a time where a pandemic makes all contact difficult? Serious questions, which you must try to answer yourself, because only by answering them you will find out what is your unique task in life. You will have to start elaborating your own ideas, your own answers to the questions posed above. Start thinking about them. If it's true that you are indeed consciousness and that there is a force behind this body, then it's obvious that that force was there before. That force already exists before you were born. So, are you a blank sheet when you are born? Does that fit the facts? Well, you can see that humans, even from birth, are different. Could it not be then that who you are now and how you live now in your country, with your parents or alone, during your education or doing your job, could it not be that is all a corollary or a consequence of what you were before? Is the environment in which I was born, you may ask yourself, the environment in which I live, nothing but a mirror in which I see myself? And besides, if I have indeed made myself, then change must be possible. Is there a doom? Or is there free will? Is it possible to think other thoughts and thereby change yourself and your environment? And that leads to the next question. Yes, what do I really want and why do I want it? If you want to find an answer to that question, isn't it good to go back to the first question, who am I? Am I that consciousness? And isn't that consciousness made up of different characteristics? Isn't there a characteristic that understands the interconnectedness of everything, that transcends the other self, the personal self, with all its uncertainties and doubts? Can it be that other self, that higher self, which experiences deep connections with my friends, my parents, yes, with all others? Can I become that self? Can I choose to align with that higher self? And when that happens, do I change? Do I become a different me? Do I get a different mindset? Don't I already know deep down in me that I want to go in a certain direction? And if I go in a different direction, do I know deep down that this is not the right direction? Does my conscience speak then? And you see, these are all questions, and of course I'm suggesting the answer a bit, maybe a lot. But in the end, it's a human being himself who has to find the answer to these questions, because then you will also gain insight into your task in the world. And finally, there's also the last question: how do I know what is true? How do I know that I have a body and that I am not a body? How do I know for sure that the cosmos is alive and not dead? Is what my parents, my teachers, my friends say true? Can I recognize truth? How can I find truth? How can I know that someone is telling me the truth, especially about life questions? Well, Theosophy teaches that if there is truth, the truth lies within you. The supreme judge, the one who with the sword of knowledge cleaves all doubt in half, is you. And how do you do it? Well, don't believe. Don't take anything on the authority of another, not even from us. Examine, research, take the answers we suggested to these questions as a hypothesis, and go and see if those answers are consistent with what you already know, or what you hold to be true. Does it make sense? Does it satisfy your mind, your rationality, your intuition, your understanding? In short, does it satisfy your heart, your head, and your mind? If not, investigate further. If so, see it as a provisional truth, a relative truth, which can certainly grow further. There is no such thing as absolute proof. Evidence is there for the one who examines and seeks to understand the evidence. And of course, there are your parents, there are your teachers, there are your friends, the books you read, the lectures you might follow. All those sources can be useful, but you are the one who determines their value and their truth. Truth easily passes the most critical examination, the most critical questions. It is that search which ultimately also leads to the life task you have set for yourself. But more about that in the third part of this lecture. So, now we have a 3 minutes break again, and then I will try to answer your questions. So, see you in 3 minutes. So, welcome back. 2 questions, né?
Yeah, 2 questions. We had 3, but one is retracted, so I think you probably answered that in your talk. The first question is, can we affect samsara with our personal karma? Or are those things irrelevant from each other?
Okay, samsara is a Buddhistic term of our outer world full of suffering. And if we can affect it, yes, of course, I think, because in fact, we interpret the outer world with our mind, with our thinking. So if we change our mind, if we are going to think differently, automatically, the outside world also change. So the answer is, without any doubt, yes, we can. We can change it. We can make a different outer world just by thinking differently.
And the other question is, you talked about that someone can think, I am a body or I have a body. And a lot of people also say, be your authentic self. But if you think you are the body, then you think that's your authentic self. So and you also talked about a higher self and the personal self. Can you help someone else in that change of thinking?
Yes, I think we can. And you have to be wise. You don't have to impose ideas. But just by changing ideas, asking questions, because a lot of people don't even think about it. Well, this question, do you have a body or are you a body? My daughters had a teacher of philosophy in high school. So when they were, I think, 13 or 14 years, they went to the philosophy classes. And in the first lesson, the teacher asked the pupils these questions: do you have a body or are you a body? And well, a lot of children, age of 13, probably because their parents thought the same, thought they are a body. But there were some discussions between the children. I'm speaking about children of 13, 14 years. And you know, the comparison with the driver and the car was made. The driver was the consciousness and the car was the body. And so just by talking with each other, having an open mind, I don't know if they really changed their mind, but they were asking themselves questions, and that's the thing you have to do. You know, if you impose thoughts, that doesn't work. But ask, make them try to make them think about those things. Because if you are going to think, and there are a lot of arguments why we are not our body, but we have a body. But the best thing is if you just talk about it open-mindedly and, of course, respect the ideas of others. We can help each other to be wiser, to at least think about those important questions. And I think we should do that. We should do that. Yeah.
Thank you. And those were the questions.
Those were the questions. So, speaking about your unique task.